Thank you, Mark, for that incredibly generous and accurate introduction. I do want to thank some people. I want to thank Annabelle Seldorf and the entire board of the League, and Rosalie Ginevro, and Rieselbach, Greg Wessner, and everyone else at the staff of the League, Tony Vidler and the Cooper Union for hosting the event tonight. And as everyone said, it's amazing that everyone's come out on this snowy evening. I'm really not much, I'm a born and raised New Yorker, and I'm not much of a complainer about the winter, but I really want spring to start like tomorrow, because it's a little bit exhausting this year. You know, I am only one of the 5 founding partners of SHoP, and the name SHoP came from our last names, which are Sharples, Holden, Pasquarelli. But there are 5 partners, 3 names. It's a little bit confusing. There'll be a chart in a minute to sort of explain it for those of you who don't know. We also have a 6th partner, Jonathan Malley, who is an architect and also is now leading up SHoP construction. We'll get there very shortly. But without Bill, Chris, Corey, and Kim, and also with everyone who is part of SHoP's staff and family, you know, it is a group practice, and that's what it's about. I just got volunteered to stand up here today. So the chart, just in case, because a lot of people do not know this, and actually we had to make this because of our clients would always get a little bit confused. So all 5 of us went to Columbia University. That's where we met. And this is the year that we graduated. So 4 of us were in the same class. Chris was a little bit earlier than us. And as we like to say, if you're in the green bar together, you're married and share things like bank accounts. And if you're in the blue blob, you're identical twins and you share things like genetic code. But one of the key things about, I think there are a couple key things, is that all 5 of us actually came to architecture a little bit later in our careers. We had other careers first. And I think that that's important because it kind of gave us a sense that we could, having not come up directly through architectural education, we sort of felt free to adopt other methods of problem solving from other industries and try to bring them to architecture. I think among our staff as well, who you can see at the bottom, we also look to see as many possible varied ways of thinking, varied backgrounds. We have many people on the staff who are not architects at all, and it's really about a think tank. SHoP is a place it's a workshop, it's a place to come together, it's a place to test things and try new things out. Now, the reason the 5 of us came together, I think really came out of the fact of, this is our sort of one slide to talk about the last 100 years of architectural history. And I think the thing that sort of really got to us was this division that happened in the last 30 years between the sort of paper architects and the service architects. The paper architects, those that could think, could do incredibly creative work, were guardians of culture, were making these amazing things, and the kind of service architects, the people that could actually design, build, execute, plan cities, and make these things happen. And when we were in school, there was really this kind of notion that you had to make a choice between one or the other. And I think that's what brought the 5 of us together, because we really didn't believe that. We really wanted to build, we wanted to execute, we wanted to think, we wanted to be involved in academia, philosophy, theory, and we wanted to know if the 5 of us together could try and figure out a way to do both of those things. I think at the same time, we were kind of questioning, again, because we came from outside of architecture, this battle of isms, this sort of cycle of stylistic consumption. And although it's incredibly interesting and an amazing sort of exercise, we just felt, was there a way to move architecture beyond those kind of stylistic implications? Was there a way to think about what the performance of architecture could be so that it would be a much longer sine curve in our careers, and also to think about it in a much different way? And so I think that was really the founding principles, LE as opposed to AL, of SHoP, which was that we wanted to be this both and firm. And what did that mean? And what would we have to do to try and get there? So the notion of performance-based design, you know, I think was being spoken about a lot in the mid-90s and the late 90s, and aerospace and the automotive industries being the 2 places where performance-based design was most understood and executed, and where you could see the history of how it was developed, these kinds of relationships between form and performance. Of course, it's in nature, it's in many different ways, but I think it was this idea of technology, of thinking about what buildings could do, how they would work, what forms they would need to be, and then what the latest technologies were that were out there that you could adapt and use in order to generate form, ornament, beauty, and inspire people. Now, the computers at that time were finally just getting fast enough where they were, and cheap enough where they were affordable for architects, where we could begin to use different kinds of programs to sort of generate these form performance relationships. And of course, early on, a lot of the things that were coming out of it was a lot of complex curving, complex geometry, which, of course, has an incredibly long history in architecture, but with labor costs what they are, was becoming something that was more and more difficult to execute. So again, we return to the idea of technology, and in the late 90s, we're really trying to spearhead both at Columbia and then eventually at Yale, but also in our office at the same time, the ideas of rapid prototyping, of using the computer to help us not only design the space, but actually fabricate, manufacture, and assemble space, and to push that idea very, very early on in our practice from the very first drawings that we did. Now, one of the things that we learned was that the idea of plan, section, and elevation as the primary drawing methods for architects to sort of get that idea, that 3- and 4-dimensional idea out, to sort of squeeze it into 2D and then to hand it to people who have to bring it back to 4D and 5D, was a really limiting way of talking about drawing. And so much of the early research was really about how do we reinvent architectural drawing, how do we reinvent the idea of time, delivery, assembly, as a way to sort of expand the notion of beauty, aesthetics, culture, and inspiration. And so for SHoP, I don't think it really ever was the form in and of itself. It was how it was made and what it did that mattered to us more than anything. And whether it's several of the bricks in Brunelleschi's dome, or 3 of the 4,000 laser cut pieces that make up the Porterhouse facade, it was this idea of trying to attack architecture from multiple levels, from multiple directions, in order to try and push what we could possibly do. Now, this is, I believe, the only drawing in the AIA documents, and we believe that this is the worst architectural drawing ever made in the history of mankind. Because this is a drawing that sets up a kind of acrimonious animosity between the key players in who gets buildings built. And so very early on in our career, a lot of what we were trying to do was to push this envelope and try to think about what these relationships were and how they could be changed. And starting with PS1 and into Greenport projects that Mark had mentioned before, even into our FIT project, a project that we won the competition in 2003. The construction documents are completed. We're just sitting here waiting for states giving its funding. We're waiting for the city to give its funding, to concert halls, to even buildings that we've done for some of America's best corporate clients. It was these kinds of different mixtures of ways of thinking about the relationship between the contractor, between the consultants, between the owner, that really kind of pushed. The more we manipulated this diagram, the more control we started to get, the more opportunities we started to get, and the greater ability we had to kind of push the limits of what we could do with design. So 2 more projects tonight. And I think that this is a question that we talk about a lot in our office. Is it really about how many pieces of technology that you can hang on a building that makes your building green? Is it just about accumulating lead points, or is it about something else? Is there a more holistic way to think about sustainability and what we're trying to do with our cities? And we're trying to question that. And on a very large project that we're doing for Google out in Mountain View, California, and then for a project that we entered a competition to do in Botswana, we took this idea of how you could think about the environment and the place that we were and build a building that was a pure performance envelope dealing with those environmental issues, mixing with the way in which they want the building to perform. So Botswana is this amazing country. It's the size of France in landmass, but has only 2 million people. It's relatively very wealthy. It has an incredibly stable democratic government. And from what we can tell, the main reason for all this well-educated population, really progressive, forward-thinking, no strife, and the main reason is that the Europeans were gone by the time they discovered the diamonds, which is really fantastic. And so they're taking this diamond wealth and they're trying to convert it into other industries. And so one of the main things that they wanted to do was build this innovation hub, which was to convert the diamond wealth into a high-tech industry. And they're inviting companies from all over the world to come down there to start knowledge transfer. And they said, and the key way to do this is with a great piece of architecture that would be an icon in our city. So we entered the competition with this idea of the dune and the delta, which are the sort of two main elements of natural conditions in Botswana. And then this idea of an energy blanket, this kind of large-scale roof and these pockets that would allow for different kinds of environmental elements to occur, and that the form of the building itself would be a kind of apparatus that both held these elements but also allowed them to work. So the sun obviously is coming from the north, and it's incredibly hot, so all the parking has to be below. Typically they build giant shade pavilions, but we said, why don't you get it below grade? And the building started to become these series of bands that could be added to or subtracted to as the building develops, and then these incredible pockets of space where we went out and surveyed the site, and there are these beautiful, beautiful 150-year-old trees all on the site. And we said, we can build the building around these trees because they have an amazing way of being able to shade the space. So here's the building as you see it at the competition. So the trees remain in the middle. There are these connecting bridges. There are the 4 bars for the first part of the development, with the sort of main hub of activity in the larger bar. And then you can move through these bridges and through the landscape, and you can drive underneath. And the form is really driven from this kind of performance envelope and energy blanket. So here you can see how the trees stay, and they come up and make these shading elements. There's water features, and these are some of the gardens, so that if you're in the shade, it's actually pretty pleasant to be outside. So that was one of the key elements. And this would be the kind of view of being in one of those pockets. The kind of energy modeling that we did, the versioning and prototyping of the fins. Here's an example of helioptics being used on that building, what it would look like to be in a space that was covered with that product. Here you can see one of the study models. We're right now we did win this one, fortunately, and we're in the middle of design development on the project. And Bill, you're heading to Botswana again next week, 2 weeks? Soon? Next week. So it's ongoing, and they're an amazing client, really wanting to push architecture, support architecture. We've gone down and trained people in Revit, in the software programs. There's an incredible knowledge transfer that's going on, and they've asked us to plan a whole development around this of about 2 million square feet. And this is literally as you come out of the main airport and drive towards downtown. The Diamond Exchange is on the left, and the Innovation Hub is on the right, and then you move into the main part of the city. So it's a very, very exciting project to do a government complex. It has theaters, meeting spaces, and lots of other elements, and it's been an amazing project for us to work on. So the last one that I'm going to show you, and this is another thing we think about in the office all the time, and we think that it's both, the answer there, but something that can be done, is the Barclay Center at Atlantic Yard. So, a super under-the-radar, uncontroversial project. It was not easy, and it was a project that was hard for us to think about taking, but we were incredibly excited about it. We spoke to Mr. Geary and asked for his permission before we would take on that project, which he granted. We've been working with AECOM and Ellery Beckett has been our partner, with Forest City and Hunt Construction, and then even with ASI Facades has teamed with SHoP Construction to actually build the facades of this building as well. But it's been an amazing challenge with incredible deadlines, and as we said, no one paying attention while we do our biggest building. But this was the form of the building as it stood in 2009. And we tried to rethink what that building could be, and that it could be a better neighbor, it could engage things in different ways, and that we could make it a capital A piece of architecture again. So we thought about the box, and I think that one of the ways we tried to think about the building was the multiple scales that it could be read. It's a big building, there's no question about it, and you've got a lot of, you've got downtown Brooklyn sort of to the northwest, you have a lot of 5- and 6-story buildings around it, but it's also a building that because of Atlantic Avenue and Flatbush Avenue, you're going to see from several miles away because of those long vistas. Anyway, so the idea was to kind of make 3 bands. A low band that kind of relates to the context next door, a middle band that would be all glass, which is the level of the second hallway, what's it called? Concourse, sorry, thank you. Concourse of the arena so that you could look out and see across the tops and see the skyline of downtown Brooklyn. And then the upper band that kind of gave it this form and shape, which was something that you could see from a distance on the scale of the city. Again, those idea of the kind of views in, the main entry plaza, this is where the subway entrance will be, and the kind of main view in. And then, not making it a dead building, having multiple entries, having retail around the side, and then having views out at all times. But I think that we really felt that there was this need for a kind of civic space, a civic gesture of some sort. And so we proposed sort of pulling out this large canopy, marquee element, but we didn't want it to be super dark under there. So we built this asymmetrical oculus in the middle, or proposed this asymmetrical oculus in the middle, which became this kind of area where all the digital boards could go on the inside, so that there'd be less of that on the outside affecting the neighborhood. It could be internalized, and then it would become this sort of landmark where you meet people before a game, where you could hang out, or it becomes part of the sort of architecture when the arena is not in use. So again, the form of the building as we drew it, and it was this idea of a kind of glass and metal wall, and then this halo that's sort of clipped on the outside and then wraps into the building was the driving idea. Here you can see some of the drawings of the facade. This is looking at Flatbush, the Flatbush facade, and looking down Atlantic Avenue at the main entry. So again, this cantilever is more than 80 feet long, more than 120 feet wide, and more than 35 or 30 feet in the air. It is huge. A basketball court would fit inside the oculus, just to give some scale. And you can see the kind of 3 layers. The lower band, at the street level, it's very, transparent. The patterning opens up so that you can see through, and the patterning continually shifts through the building to respond to the program that's going on inside. And then this is, there was an existing design for a transit entrance, and so we've sort of made it this little element that relates to the big building. And what's pretty fantastic is you will come up from the subway, come out this front door, look right through the oculus, and up at the sky beyond. So, as we were just, actually, there's a series of drawings to tell you that. So I think one of the great design elements, though, is that from the plaza at all times, you will be able to see right through the entrance and look at the scoreboard. So the scoreboard is visible from the outside of the building. You can't see the game, obviously, because they're down below, but there's this immediate interaction when one comes to an arena that, I am a sports fan, and like, to me, the moment is coming down the vomitory. You get through that point, and you turn, and you see everyone else looking at you. This is something that will be on display at all times from the public spaces. And again, that idea of the view up through the oculus, what that might look like. And the ability to get all the digital signage on the inside, we think, is an incredible accomplishment in its relationship to the neighborhood. And you can see there's the scoreboard hanging right there. And the Nets will be winning by the time this building is done. We've also been working on the whole public spaces. So again, here's the subway entrance. There's so much infrastructure. You have 11 subway lines plus the Long Island Railroad. There's so little that you could actually do, but we tried our best to get as much, things to make this a great area. Here, where the first 3 buildings, Tower 2, Tower 3, and Tower 4, will go around the building according to the Geary master plan. We were even saying during the summer, or when there aren't events, You could do a live feed from Prospect Park and sort of, project it on the Oculus while they have cafe seating out there. But really, it wasn't about just a facade. It was about how could we get this inside the building and really, make this building sing. And so we wanted to take the weathering steel halo and kind of bring it in. And I think there was this idea of kind of the Brooklyn night, the sort of wet street. I don't know if it's film noir. I don't know, something romantic about it, about the sort of shiny floor, the dark ceiling with the stars, the kind of pop of color that was really our inspiration for the way that this might look. So the metal all sort of pulls in and becomes these kind of fingers and roofs through the concourses. You could see the kind of signage. We've been calling our concession stands the Donald Judd concession stands because they're these kind of minimalist boxes that pop out through the black wall in weathering steel. We try to minimize signage as much as we could, but to kind of get that sort of undulating feel as it moves through the arena. And at the same time, have this ability to look out. So even in some of the entries, you could see the panels open up so you get great views. The concourses. And, it isn't quite that dark, but it's pretty dark. And I think that we really feel about, sports, it's like black box theater. It is theater. It's this theater where there's no scripted ending. It's this place that you go and you don't know what's going to happen at the end. And so it was really about kind of this atmospheric element, not looking garish with a lot of bright colors, but this really very sophisticated palette that runs around. The patterning goes into the boxes as it comes around it on the bands through the arena. Some of the restaurants, this is the sort of beer garden again, this kind of box that just pops through, and it's been really interesting. Can you take this kind of architecture and apply it to something like a sports arena? And there are these elements where these other very sort of special bars or restaurants kind of burst through the dark black box and make these places that you could sit and have a different kind of experience. And we believe that you can. We believe that you can make great architecture in a building like this, and we are incredibly excited about it. I think the other thing about it that's amazing is that, as we said, SHoP Construction and ASI are building this thing together. So the unfold, the way we're doing it in CATIA, unfolding the panels, making these mega panels, and then right now in Indianapolis, there is a 60,000 foot factory built where our 12,000 panels are being cut directly from the files produced at SHoP. They're being hung on these tracks, and they're going through hundreds of wet-dry cycles, which are creating the rust patina, and they're being hung and weathered and tested. And this is what it looks like, I think, as of this week. They're being assembled into these mega panels. And then these are the tests of the full-scale mock-ups of the mega panels, and then there are 921 of these that will be taken in from Indianapolis and then clipped onto the side of the building, and what the building will look like when it's open in about 20 months. So, I don't think we're calling for a new period, a new style, a new moment, and certainly not a new ism. I think that we are talking about the fact that architecture is an amazing profession, and I think that the technology shifts equal paradigm shifts, equal opportunity. And I think that everyone at SHoP really believes that this idea that we would be reduced to just making the facade of a building or just showing how something would look is really a mistake. That we need to get into the thickness of buildings. We need to know how they work. We need to know, and we used to know this. This is what we come from as a profession, right? The master builder knew this stuff, and we just kept giving it away and giving it away and giving it away. And it's very important. It's about a kind of internal integrity about what the building needs to do, an external dealing with forces, whether they're finance or politics or technology or materials or construction. But it's also about inspiring us. It's about making art. It's about making something that's beautiful. And as we've said lots of times, the most sustainable thing that you can do is build a building that people love, because then they don't renovate it every 10 or 20 years. They take care of it. It lasts. It transforms itself, and it lives on. And that's, to us, more important than lead points, if you will. So I think that we feel incredibly lucky to be entering SHoP version 3.0. I feel like we're incredibly lucky to have the staff and the partnership that we have and to be in this amazing city. We believe that good architects are never in competition with each other. It's all about us pushing it together. And that we're in competition with mediocrity. That's what we're in competition with. As long as good architecture keeps getting done at any single scale, it pushes the whole profession forward. And by grabbing these other territories, I think it's our best way to, together as a profession, continue to push the bar forward. So, the New York Times recently said of this room, and I have to say that I'm incredibly honored to speak here, as I said, in my hometown and with my family and partners here. But, the New York Times recently said of this room that the voices of presidents, social reformers, leaders in the arts and sciences, literary lions, and assorted troublemakers and dreamers now echo along the corridors at Cooper Union constantly. I hope tonight we made one small wave in that echo, and that our commitment to art and architecture will be heard loud and strong as a necessary element in the future of this incredible city. Thank you very much.